Is Canada better than the US?
This year, the number of Americans moving or traveling to Canada has doubled.
What if I told you that right now, thousands of Americans are crossing into Canada not for vacation, but to survive? What if the invisible line that separates two nations is becoming more meaningless every single day? This isn't some fantasy scenario. In 2024, American immigration applications to Canada jumped by 193%. That's nearly triple the normal rate. Healthcare bankruptcies in border states have reached record highs, while just miles away, Canadians receive the same treatments for free. But here's what gets really interesting. There are 5 specific U.S. states where the connection to Canada has grown so deep, so essential to daily survival, that residents have started asking a dangerous question. What exactly are we getting from Washington that we can't get better from Ottawa? This isn't about politics or ideology. It's about where people go when their government fails them. And today, we're revealing the 5 states where that journey north has already begun. Vermont doesn't make headlines, and that's exactly how they'd like it. Tucked away in New England's corner, this state has been conducting a quiet experiment for decades. While other states fight over federal funding and political points, Vermont has been building something different, a bridge to the north that might just be their lifeline. Drive through towns like Derby Line or Newport, and you'll notice something strange. The license plates. Half are from Vermont, half from Quebec. The accents blend together. Families span both sides of the border like it's just another county line. But that's not all. The real story is in the hospitals. A 2024 report revealed that over 40% of Vermont residents in border counties have used Canadian healthcare services in the past 2 years. Not for cosmetic surgery, we're talking about insulin, cancer treatments, emergency surgeries. The kind that would bankrupt them in the U.S. Vermont hospitals have started formal partnerships with Montreal medical centers, sharing equipment, training programs, even patient records. The numbers? Staggering. The average Vermont family pays $23,000 annually for health insurance, with a $6,000 deductible. Drive 2 hours north to Quebec, and that same family gets comprehensive coverage for free. It gets crazier. Vermont college students are increasingly choosing Canadian universities. Where tuition costs 70% less. The University of Vermont has lost 15% of its in-state enrollment to Canadian schools in just 3 years. But listen to this, Vermont's economy isn't suffering. It's thriving. Cross-border trade has increased 340% since 2020. Vermont businesses are registering Canadian subsidiaries just to access universal health care. The reason this is happening isn't complicated. Vermont and Quebec share more than a border. They share values. Environmental protection, social welfare, sustainable development. When you live in a place where winter can kill you if systems fail, you start valuing competence over ideology. 2. Washington. Silicon Valley might get all the attention, but Washington State, that's where the real tech revolution is happening, and increasingly north. Seattle sits just 150 miles from Vancouver, so we're thinking close enough for a daily commute if the border weren't there. But for many tech workers, that border is already meaningless. Microsoft, Amazon, Boeing, they all maintain massive operations in Seattle and Vancouver. And it gets worse, or better, depending on your perspective. A leaked internal survey from Amazon revealed that 60% of their Seattle-based engineers have considered relocating to Vancouver or Toronto within the next 5 years. Why? It's not salary. It's everything else. Housing. In Seattle, the average engineer pays $4,200 a month for a 1-bedroom. In Vancouver, $2,800. Healthcare. In Washington, tech workers pay $8, $400 a year in premiums. In Canada, free student loans. The average University of Washington grad carries $34,000 in debt. Canadian grads, just $12,000. Even UBC, the University of British Columbia, has become a secret weapon. Washington tech firms recruit UBC grads who bring Canadian healthcare and visa perks. They're actually more attractive than American candidates. But listen to this, 73% of goods through Seattle ports go to Canadian destinations. That trade supports over 400,000 Washington jobs. When Canadian dock workers went on strike in 2023, Washington's unemployment spiked by 15% in 2 weeks. The region is already acting like one giant Pacific Northwest megazone. Shared environmental laws. aligned tech regulations, cross-border lobbying, even campaign donations from Canadian firms into Washington state elections. This isn't the future. It's already here. Maine doesn't mess around. When you live in a place where winter storms can cut you off from the world for weeks, you learn to value practical partnerships over political loyalty. And for Maine, that partnership increasingly means looking north to New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. The numbers tell the story. Canada is Maine's largest trading partner, accounting for 47% of all exports. But that's not all. Maine's lobster industry, the backbone of its coastal economy, is completely integrated with Canadian processing facilities. When trade disputes threaten tariffs, Maine fishermen don't call Washington. They work directly with Canadian officials to keep the supply chains moving. And it gets even more interesting. Maine's population is aging faster than almost any other state. The median age is 45 and rising. Healthcare costs for seniors are crushing family budgets. Prescription meds that cost $400 a month in Portland, Maine, just $45 across the border in St. John, New Brunswick. It gets crazier. Maine seniors are organizing bus trips to Canada for routine medical care, hip replacements, cataract surgeries, dental work. In Maine, $30,000. In Canada, $8,000, even paying out of pocket. The border towns tell the real story. Calais, Maine, and St. Stephen, New Brunswick share a water system, a fire department, and even a high school sports league. Families live on both sides. Businesses operate in both currencies. When the border closed during the pandemic, both communities nearly died, not from tourism loss, but because daily life had become completely integrated. But listen to this. Maine's young people are voting with their feet. Graduates are leaving the state at the highest rate in the nation, but they're not going to Boston or New York. They're going to Halifax, Montreal, and Toronto, where student debt is manageable, healthcare is guaranteed, and rent won't eat 60% of your income. Why is this happening? Because for many in Maine, survival is on the line. Their government can't provide basic services, heating assistance, rural healthcare, elderly care. These programs are being cut while taxes keep rising. Just across the border, those same services are expanding. When survival is at stake, loyalty becomes a luxury. 4. New Hampshire, live free or die. That's not just New Hampshire's motto, it's a philosophy. And oddly enough, it's leading people to look north for the freedom they can't find at home. Sounds backwards? The data says otherwise. New Hampshire has the 4th highest property taxes in the country. No state income tax? Sure, but that just means the burden falls hard on homeowners. The average family pays $6,800 a year in property taxes. Across the border in Quebec, $2,100, and with better public services. But it gets worse. New Hampshire has the highest rate of medical bankruptcy in New England. Over half of residents within 100 miles of the Canadian border have used Canadian healthcare in the last 3 years. That's not a stat, that's a shift in behavior. Even the University of New Hampshire is losing students. Why? Tuition is $36,000 a year. But at McGill University in Montreal, one of the top research universities in the world, it's $8,000 for Americans. That's not a hard choice, but here's the twist. New Hampshire residents aren't abandoning their values. They're finding better ways to live them. Town halls are studying Canadian healthcare cooperatives. Broadband proposals are modeled after Quebec's municipal fiber networks. The state that once rejected seatbelt laws is now embracing universal healthcare because it works. Freedom doesn't mean dying in debt. It means being able to see a doctor without choosing between that and your mortgage. It means educating your kids without a lifetime of loans. It means retiring with dignity. And increasingly, New Hampshire residents see that freedom north of the border. Alaska isn't just the largest U.S. state, it's the most isolated. And that isolation has created a deep, functional bond with Canada. Want to drive from Alaska to the lower 48? You have to go through 1,200 miles of Canadian territory. That's not just a route, that's a lifeline. 78% of all goods entering Alaska by land come through Canadian ports and highways. During the pandemic, when global supply chains froze, Alaska's shelves emptied, except for shipments flowing from British Columbia and the Yukon. Today, Alaskan companies are storing inventory in Canadian warehouses because it's more reliable than shipping from Seattle. And healthcare? Alaska depends on Canadian emergency services. When someone in a remote village has a medical emergency, they're often flown out by air ambulances from Whitehorse or Yellowknife. Complex treatments go to Vancouver or Calgary, not Denver. Culturally, the bond runs even deeper. Alaska's indigenous communities have more in common with First Nations in Canada than with the lower 48. They share language, traditions, even governance systems. When climate change threatens their way of life, they work together, regardless of which flag flies overhead. And don't forget energy. Alaska's energy independence is tied to Canada. The Alaska-Canada natural gas pipeline ensures security. Hydroelectric power from British Columbia keeps the lights on in Southeast Alaska. Even internet connectivity, routed through Canadian fiber. This matters because Alaska's future is already integrated. Arctic shipping routes are opening. Economic development, environmental protection, resource extraction, they all require cross-border cooperation. And as Washington becomes more dysfunctional, Alaska is finding that Ottawa gets things done. The northern reality, this isn't about secession. It's not about disloyalty. It's about survival. The numbers don't lie. Cross-border trade with Canada, up 290% since 2020. Healthcare tourism, exploded by 400%. Educational exchanges, tripled. This isn't political rebellion. This is practical reality. And the truth is, these states aren't becoming less American. They're becoming more pragmatic. They're choosing competence over ideology, results over rhetoric, survival over symbolism. Sometimes the most patriotic thing you can do is learn from your neighbors. So the question isn't, will these states join Canada? It's, will the rest of America learn from their example before it's too late? Because when basic needs like healthcare, education, and economic security become unattainable, people don't wait for political solutions. They find practical ones. And sometimes those solutions are just a short drive north.